Alright, so we got the turd polish out in the E39. Polished up pretty good. We used the F11 on it. Would I recommend it? For $70 a bottle? I don't know. We'll do a video later on. So today we have our 51-ish things to look for in buying a E39 with 100,000 plus miles. Okay, so we're going to start off with a few things here. Now some of this is going to be dependent on how the car is treated. Assuming they're treated like they usually are, pretty badly. You know, to find one of these 100K on, it's pretty low mileage, but this is the list. You're gonna have to do 100K and then again at 200K. Not everything, but you know, a lot of it's gonna be there. Number one, the first thing you're gonna see is fading paint. Fading paint is a direct result of not taking care of it, not top coating it, not washing it correctly, and too much sun. Black seems like some of them fade. The most common colors are usually the burgundy color, which is pretty rare to find. The clear coat comes off of those. It seems like pretty easy. And the blue, the Brits blue one. Those are usually the two most common ones. So we'll move right along here. The next one is foggy headlights. Now these have been done, been polished already, and all that kind of stuff. So you're gonna see that very first. Usually they're polishable outable. But on E39s, you have to start pretty heavy on the sandpaper because they have like a clear coat you got to take off. These had all that done already. Broken headlight adjusters. So the headlight adjusters will actually break and then lights will point right down the ground. So I have videos out of how to fix that. Depends on what model it is, so on and so on and so on. Let me see here. Window trim, front and rear coming off. By talking about that, I mean the windshield trim. This one needs a set. This one's supposed to have rubber going around it. It is gone. You're gonna notice almost every E39 has this. This one actually still has the rear, but the corner pieces are missing. I don't know if we'll do that on this car or not. We'll see. Next thing I notice is the cowling is rotten. The windshield wiper cowling, you can see down here, the rubber seal is rotted off of it. And that's another thing you're just going to see on almost all of them. The sunroof drain leaking. So the way these sunroofs are set up, they have a drain in each corner, the front and rear. So there's 4 drains all together. Actually, the rear is like back here. A lot of times those drains will pop off or get stopped up and cause it to leak and make the carpet wet. The door cards, not the actual door card itself, but the inside foam piece. If you don't glue it back in, if you do a window regulator, it'll actually leak, cause the carpets to get wet, and all kinds of other issues. We'll come back to that here in a second. Window regulators breaking. These things are notorious. For window regulator, the plastic has a cable, then it has a plastic pulley. If you roll these down when it's below zero outside or below freezing, they like to shear off, or just from age. Let me see here. Inner door handle. So this is the outer door handle. The outer door handle frame, I guess I mean. There's actually a metal frame that goes along the inside of there, and it actually could break very easily. That's a common problem on this and E53. Let me see here. Mirrors turning blue. I don't know if these haven't really done it. You can see a little bit on the bottom corner here. It'll actually start separating. The rear view mirror and the windshield could actually also do that. That's pretty common. Radio cluster pixels going out. And let's see if we could show you here a little bit of what's happening. This one barely has it. And you can see it just has lines, a couple lines through it. Some of them you can't even read. A lot of times on the cluster, they will also go out. This one is not out. So that's good. That's pretty rare to see that. Usually this low cluster doesn't do it. Usually the high cluster that has a longer window will actually do that quite a bit. And let me see here. Phone's all slow and weird. Headliner A, B, and C pillar falling down. A pillar, this one's really good. B pillar is right here. Usually the material comes off of both of those. And especially on the C pillar back here, this one's actually really good, and the headliner and the slide. Usually those are more hot climate situations that those happen. That's not as common. You're not going to see that on every car, put it that way. Turn that thing down before we get copyright strike. Water getting to the passenger floor fuse box. Okay, so under the carpet over here, there is a big ass fuse box. I'll put a picture up for you here. And if anything happens with the sunroof drain or any kind of water gets in the floor, it's going to rot that fuse box out. Stuff's going to start not working. It's going to be really bad times, no doubt. One I did not put on here too was actually these cup holders breaking. These are actually broken. That's all inexpensive fix. And a lot of that too is to do with people that own it being hard on stuff, not understanding cup holders, and so on. Let me see here. The rear drive shaft, Guibo carrier, and rear CV axle. CV joint, not axle. So on the drive shaft, you have the Guibo, you have the center carrier support bearing that holds it up in the middle. It's two-piece drive shaft. And on the rear, where it bolts to the rear diff, it has like a CV joint thing, right? So those are potentially go bad. Usually the carrier bearing goes bad first, and then it'll take out the other items after the drive shaft's flopping around. So hypothetically, usually if you change the carrier bearing when it goes out, it's about 30 bucks. You don't have the other issues. Rear taillight connector burns out on LCI models. Okay, so let's go ahead and go out here and stop this. I have to excuse my trunk of parts here. I need to throw about half the stuff away, but here's a new control arm. So this car, actually, we'll have a video up pretty soon on that. On these LCI models, set that bad boy down. You can see here or not. Where they plug in here at this top plug, a lot of times you unplug that, it'll be kind of burn up. And since these upper lights are all LED on these models, they tend to do that in higher mileage. I haven't seen too much around 100. Get around 200,000 miles, depends on how much your lights are on, I guess. I see quite a bit of that. Let me see here. Lost replace. Transmission fluid needs serviced correctly, needs filled and serviced correctly. So I have many videos up showing how to do this, and you have to change and fill the fluid regularly, just like any transmission on any car, or it will have issues in high mileage. Usually around 100 to 150,000 miles, it'll grenade itself. It'll break the D drum. It'll have all kinds of valve body issues if you don't change that. Light control module. On this one, I don't remember if this was light control module is behind the glove box. I think it was in the passenger footwell. It can go on. It can make the headlights stay on, or blinker, or tail light, or anything stay on when the car is off. You know, a lot of these cars would be real common to see them. The car will be off, one headlight be on, the other one be off, everything else be off, and it'll run the battery dead. Light control modules, I think, are usually mostly failing due because of water. If you have a sunroof leakage problem or a door card leakage problem, it runs down and gets in that. Remember, now it is in the passenger footwell because water runs over it if the sunroof's leaking. So let me see here. Hot water valve for the heater core fails. Let me open the hood and show you that. Hot water valve is right here. And usually what happens, that'll fail. Sometimes you get 200,000 miles out of those. You just never really know. When it fails, you can put your hand on top of the little electric motors. It'll be red hot. A lot of times your heaters will stop working, or the heater won't turn off. That's a super common issue. Let me see here. Easy to lose your spot on this list. PCV, CCV fails. This one's all been done with a brand new Febby Bilstein. This hose goes down to the PCV system, which drains back into the dipstick tube, which basically draws blow-by off the crankcase and reburns it, and drains the oil back down into the oil pan. ICV. So these have a ICV, auto control valve, auto air control valve, IAC, whatever you want to call it. It sits up under the DISA valve, which that actually could break too. They have a tendency to stick if the car's been sitting a while. That'll make it stumble around 1500 RPMs when you go to accelerate, or it'll be hard to cold start it. Depends on which way it's stuck. And let me see. Coil packs failing. Coil packs, of course, are under here, under the cover. They have a tendency to fail, even the newer style ones. Around 100,000 miles is about what you get out of a set of those. Usually you replace those in a whole set, not just one at a time. You're going to be chasing that issue. And valve cover cracking. So all these cars from 1996 and up have plastic valve covers. And usually in the very rear, usually between 4 and 5 or 5 and 6 cylinders, it'll crack. It'll drip oil on the manifold. On E39, the way it's set up, you can definitely smell those big time. And let me see here. Next one would be Vanos seals. This is the Vanos unit right here, this metal unit. It has like rubber oil rings in it that seal, that runs off oil pressure that advances the timing. Those fail. Those are not expensive at all. They're about $30. Takes a little know-how how to put them in, but it's not too bad. No timing procedure is needed to replace those. Coolant hoses and overflow tank failing. We have the shroud gone off of this one. We'll get to that here in 1 second. Usually the coolant hoses, 100,000 miles. Upper and lower radiator hoses have to be done. The tank has to be done. You should replace this. And there's a couple other things that you have to do. And that's if it's M54. This engine stuff is not for the 540. The 540 time and chain guides, you know, is the biggest downfall of those. There's not many 540s around, so this video doesn't really pertain to 540 engine wise or M5, but the rest of the car is the same. So let me see here. So the water pump, number 25 is the water pump. The water pump sits behind this pulley right here, and that is a common failure point around 100,000 miles. Usually the impeller shears off or it starts leaking through the bearing itself. The thermostat. Usually the thermostat will stick, it'll fail cold or start leaking and get warped. It sits right here. Usually that sensor goes bad and is made, you could change it, but you can't buy it separately. So you got to change the whole thermostat. That's inexpensive. Let me see. Next up is going to be oil pan gasket. Oil pan gasket on these is an issue after that many miles. M54 isn't really as bad as some of the newer engines, but it'll be seeping at that mileage, no doubt. The next one is oil filter housing. Right here's the oil filter housing. There's a gasket where it bolts to the block. That'll eventually start leaking. That's about a $7 piece to replace that. Let me see here. The rear main seal, it's not quite as prevalent or bad on these engines as some of the other ones. Depends on what's been done to it. If you ran the PCV system, haven't replaced that correctly, well, that could definitely lead to a blown rear main seal. You will have to take the engine out or the transmission out to replace that. Power steering filter stopped up and line leaks. So they have the reservoir right here, which has the filter in the bottom of it, and the lines usually tend to get kind of rotten after a while and start dripping. That's all inexpensive stuff though. Let me see here. Dipstick vent stopping up and the oil ring filling. So on this one, the dipstick is right here, of course, and that pushes down to the oil pan. Well, the PCV system drains back through that dipstick through tiny holes. They get stopped up. That could back up the PCV or CCV. Also, the oil ring where it pushes into the oil pan could fail. Every time you turn a corner, it could run a trail of oil out on the ground and potentially run you out of oil pretty quick, running you dangerously low on oil pretty quick. Throttle body boot cracking. And you can see this guy right here has just all been replaced. It's all new. Usually where it goes down and bends the throttle body and where it goes down and bends to the auto control valve where it tees off, we'll get dry rot cracks on it. That's another issue. Secondary air pump not working. I can't show you because this one's been deleted. We have a block off plate here where the secondary air valve went. This one's running Euro 1 tune, so no oxygen sensors. You can see they're blocked off too. None of the 4 oxygen sensors use that tune. The secondary air pump, valve, the pump itself, the hose is all deleted. That's a big upgrade. You don't have to worry about none of that crap. That makes the car a lot cheaper to run too, by the way. Radiator shroud, stupid design and cracks. Yeah. So we have this one off. I have a brand new one in the trunk. I'll probably go ahead and put it back on. that holds this bottle and clips on there. It's real stupid if you got to work in this car, especially on the side of the road. If you throw a belt or something, almost impossible to get around that without snapping it, especially if it's got some age on it. Let me see here. Idler pulley is going bad. So on this car, you have the idler pulley right here. That's the number one culprit for going bad. You have tensioner pulley for the main belt, tensioner for the AC belt. All those usually go bad. It's the plastic pulley, the metal bearing obviously. The bearing starts to go out, it starts to get hot, melts the plastic, derails the belt. Usually that only happens on longer trips. The telltale sign of those, when you start the car from cold, it'll squeal like a damn Yeti, but also the PCV could also make the same noise. So you just kind of got to know what you're doing with that. So let me see here. Cam sensors going bad. So this car has two cam sensors. It has an intake cam sensor, which is right down behind here. It has an exhaust cam sensor, which is right here. If either one of those go bad, you can have some starting issues. And the next, even after that, is the crankshaft sensor, which sits at the back of the engine by the starter. If that goes bad, it'll have hot start issues, maybe even cold start issues. They get like a blister on them over time. Usually we see those failures on the crankshaft about 150,000 miles. Failures on the camshaft sensors, on the exhaust camshaft sensor, usually less than 100,000 miles sometimes. It just depends on the car and what's been done to it. Fresh air boxes, cracked and broken, leaking smell. These are what I call the fresh air boxes. They have a filter that filters air from outside, has a spout that goes down inside the car, and those don't fit very well. They're never airtight. They're kind of cheesy. If you have any kind of engine smell at all, especially oil from a leaky valve cover, it goes right in the cab. So there is a lot of issues with that. With E39, they seem to be the worst about doing that. And let me see here. Coolant hard pipes under the intake. This has two hard coolant pipes that go under the intake. One goes in the back of the timing case, one goes into the side of the head. They come out, I believe they both go to the heater core, to that valve, in some way or another. Those have a tendency to degrade and blow out. Usually that's more of a 150 to 200,000 mile issue, but it is definitely on the list. Control arms going bad. Like I said, there's new control arms in this trunk. This has a thrust arm design system, so it has a tiny control arm that goes from the bottom of the spindle into the frame, a longer one that hooks from the bottom of the spindle, goes up to the frame. Those have bushings that usually go bad. You know, it's just a super common issue. You will have those problems at 100,000 miles. ABS module, you also have this issue that hasn't been fixed. It just sits right here. The heat from the manifold breaks down the electronics. Actually, this one is bad. And then it has all kinds of ABS codes you can't clear. That's what we have going on here. Let me see here. ABS wheel sensors going bad. That's not as big as an issue. Usually the connector gets water in it, and there's one on each wheel and each spindle, and they could also get dirt in them and cause the light to come on. Let me see here. Trunk wiring breaking up. E39 isn't as bad as some other cars about this, but they never really rectified the problem at all. Where the wires go through the hinge here and make the bend, they tend to break the coating on the wires. You can have all kinds of light failures and issues with that. Front and rear sway bar links is the next one. Where are we at here? Number 47. Front and rear sway bar links have like a plastic cup, I guess to make them quieter. Unfortunately, what it does in the long run, it makes them wear out pretty quick. So we had a lot of luck with Febby Bilstein sway bar links on this one. Usually the bushing where it bolts to the frame usually don't go bad. Gas tank purge solenoid. The gas tank purge solenoid sits right under the intake. It sits right there. You can see the connector to it. And that has a tendency to go bad on the newer models. I think more like 02, 03, that's more of an issue with. I think 03 E46 had a real bad problem with that. Fuel tank transfer pump. So this has a saddlebag fuel tank. It goes up over the drive shaft in the middle, and it has a tank on the passenger side and the driver's side, and usually that has a transfer pump that goes from side to side. That can go bad, so when you go to fill it full of fuel, you only fill half the tank at once, and you even could run out of gas when it says your tank's still half full. Front corner marker bulb sockets. On LCI cars, it's not as bad. On pre-LCI and E46, the actual corner marker, the socket on the back, gets kind of deteriorated, gets kind of burnt, you might say, and it starts making contact. And they changed these push-in style, they're a little better. Also, the headlight bulbs, I can't show you, this says HIDs. The halogen sockets have issues with the same thing, getting burned up on the inside. Let me see here, almost done. Headlight bolt threads, head bolt threads pull out of the block if it overheated. An aluminum block, steel bolts, you overheat it, it pulls the threads out of the block. The best things about this car, guys, I would say, parts are really cheap. Car is super easy to work on, and car can last well over 300,000 miles if taken care of. So hope you like this video, guys. We'll be back very soon. We'll see you later.